All right, folks, that is where I want to say a special greetings and welcome to all of you locked into that space at this time. Sorry for beginning a little late this afternoon. Like it sometimes happens with technology, yeah? We are here, and yes, we are ready to go. I hope you guys are hearing me loud and clear and also seeing me loud and clear as well. Having some technical difficulties this afternoon, but yes, we'll try our very best to bring you on that all-important program called Civic Vibes. Zed, are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you loud and clear, brother.
All right, that is very, very well. Alvin, are you there as well?
Yes, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you.
All right, Alvin, let me say a special greetings, a special welcome to you, a special welcome to Zed as well, and all our many fans locked in this afternoon from not just Dominica, throughout the region and or further afield. Folks, as I said, I apologize, or we apologize rather, for the sort of late start, quarter past the hour already. We're expecting two important guests from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, one in the name of Miss King, and also Brother Hamlet, as we go through this evening's program, wanting to get an update as to what transpired with the elections, the just concluded elections in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So we are waiting people from St. Vincent, and we'll try to make a very, very good program here this evening. So let me now, just without saying any more, move across to Brother Alvin Thomas for his opening remarks, as it were.
Yes, good afternoon, good evening, actually, Lofty, and to my brother Zed. Pleasant good evening to you guys. And let me also join you in extending a pleasant good evening to our folks who have really logged in. I know they've been patiently waiting, Lofty, for this evening's program, given, of course, the recent developments that have taken place throughout the region. I'm almost certain that they anticipate that there would be some conversation on that, and they are so right. So I say to all of them, a special good evening. To those of you who are celebrating any special occasions, we say to you, congratulations, continues to celebrate whatever that is. And to any one of you who are mourning any loss or any, disappointments, we say to you that hanging in there. And you're always in our prayers as you go through these difficulties. But let me just say, as you rightly pointed out, Lofty, we'll be having most likely two of our guests from St. Vincent that will be able to share with us in a more direct way what their perspective are in terms of what transpired in St. Vincent. But just to say, though, for those of us outside of St. Vincent, it has been a very interesting development, very interesting event. I have seen quite a bit of commentaries already circulating. The pundits already giving their own perspective of things. I think we all will have our different perspective. But at the end of the day, I think it's an event that is worth some conversation, that has some bearing on the rest of the region, not just St. Vincent. So I'm looking forward to a real engaging conversation this afternoon, and I'm sure our folks who have already logged in themselves will be chiming in on the conversation. So again, a pleasant good evening to everyone. Sit back, relax, and let the conversation begin.
All right, Alvin, thank you very much, my brother, for your opening remarks here indeed. Let me just touch some of our people by name, those who are already here. We have people like Mali Ostri, Stephanie John Baptiste, Rosa Robinson, Eliza, Luis Gomes, Owen, brother Owen Prosme, Guvelma Hambrin is always locked in, Ivinia, Joseph, and the list goes on and on indeed. Folks, your responsibility it is to share that live feed, make someone know that that program is on, and they too can participate. Tell Lou to tell Sue, tell Paul to tell all, as it were. Brother Zed Lloyd, good evening to you in a very special way.
Good evening, brother. Good evening. Good evening, brother Alvin. Good evening to the listeners and friends and others. Good evening. Sorry for being late, We're trying, we're getting there. Lofty, I think today is a good conversation on, for me, while St. Vincent is the premise, the jump off and Gonzales, I think the example and the different, parts of that whole conversation, I want to take it home, and deal with the parallels. I think they're critical. I think in many ways there are a lot of similarities to St. Vincent and also some crucial differences in mindset and so forth. So I think it's a good conversation for us to have today and see how we can take it outside of St. Vincent to that broader region and especially to our homeland, Dominica. That's my intent.
Yes, indeed, Zed. Thank you very much, and I know that you will sort of bring home those points that you raised earlier, Zed, in terms of the just concluded elections held in St. Vincent, but letting us know that we too in Dominica, we are on similar trajectory as it were. And yes, we too in Dominica, we can learn a lot from what went on in St. Vincent. Alvin, just before I get back to you, sir, let me again alert those who are joining us now. We'll be having most likely at the bottom of the hour, 6:30 thereabout, a young lady from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That is the name in the name of Miss Adriana King. Adriana King was on our program sometime back, and she has accepted and consented to be here with us just to give us some sort of update as it relates to that activity, that election that just concluded electoral process that went on in St. Vincent and just give the mood of the people as from her perspective. We're also expecting another journalist that is from St. Vincent, but when I made contact with him earlier, he told me that he is in St. Lucia as we speak, covering the elections. I believe St. Lucia elections is when tomorrow, the first, I believe. Yes.
Yeah.
So he's engaged. And so he told me, Lofty, I'm not promising you guys, but just in case I can make it with you guys, I will jump on. So we're expecting at least two of them, Adriana King and also Mr. Hamlet Mack. Let's hope that they can join us sometime later in the conversation and we can, sort of learn something from them indeed. So Alvin, please get the conversation of the ball. Zed, I know you have a clip. Alvin, just before, okay, yeah, let Alvin jump in because I think Zed clip in terms of what he prophesied for St. Vincent people, it basically came to pass. So we'll have that after your sort of opening or introductory statements. Yes, Alvin.
Thank you, Lofty. Thank you, Lofty. And again, good afternoon to my friend Zed. Zeddy.
Greetings, brother.
My boy Zed, an SMA alumni, I must say. The men from SMA. It's always good to have you, Zeddy. Conversation. But where do I start, Lofty? Let me kind of see. Let me see if I can, just put my own spin on it, if you may call it that. And to begin by saying though that apart from everything else and all what have transpired, the name Ralph Gonzalez is a powerful, formidable, well-known name, not just in the region, but internationally. I think even long before Dr. Ralph Gonzalez got into politics, we know of his engagement at the university. We know of his stance on Caribbean unity, if one might put it this way, Pan-Africanism, the way he feels as a Caribbean man and where the Caribbean should be and what they should be doing. We've saying that we know he's the only island in the region that never got into a CBI program. And that was because he cherished the sovereignty of his country, St. Vincent, and the Caribbean by extension, and felt that that was not up for sale. No matter how bad things might be, he's not going to get into that CBI program. And he was very vocal about it. His colleagues didn't quite agree with it. And we know his position on China. He felt, well, China as a superpower shouldn't try to bulldoze him into getting into diplomatic arrangement with them. And he remained with Taiwan and continued that diplomatic relationship, notwithstanding the pressures and the fact that all of his colleagues in the region, almost all of them, even those who were in diplomatic relationship with Taiwan, turned wrong and gave Taiwan the boot and went to China. So I'm saying all of this to say that this is the man that we're looking at. So we can't dismiss that. We can't just look at that one event, which is the election, and try to categorize him as the Ralph Gonzalez of an event that took place on Thursday. We have to look at the total man. The question remains, though, is what happened? What has happened over that period of time? And I think what comes to mind and the question which I think folks will be asking and folks will be writing, there's going to be a lot of writing on this particular event. I'm telling you, they have just begun. There will be conversation at university level, at political level, at party level, at group level, because again, as I say, of who this individual was. So there's going to be that conversation, and there are going to be different perspectives. And I think one of the things we have to begin to do as of now is to learn to agree and disagree. People will have different perspectives, but we must do so again in a very civil and respectable manner. But I think, though, what that does, it does in fact begs the question, what message have that sent to the rest of the region and the Caribbean? And I know later on in the conversation, we'll be trying to draw parallel with what currently obtains in Dominica in terms of Prime Minister Kerry term in office, which is kind of similar to Ralph. The question of long-serving leaders, does that raises the question which we have always had at this conversation on term limits and the need for our constitution to be looked at. We are shy of 3 years as an independent, shy of 3 years of celebrating 50 years as an independent nation. And I don't recall any of the islands, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't recall any of the islands, starting with Trinidad in the south, that's been way independent before us, Guyana, Jamaica, Barbados. None of them have done any serious review of the Constitution to say, well, okay, that was what the colonial masters intended, but given how things are in the region, maybe we need to have 2 terms or 3 terms. So we don't have situations like what occur in St. Vincent or occurring in Dominica to occur. Then it begs the other question, leadership. At what point does the leader of a party realize, boy, I have served, I have given my best, I think now it's time to hand over to a new generation, to another leader. And the whole question of us allowing and creating an environment for dictators, for tyrants to rule. So I'm saying all of this to say it begs a number of questions. And I think what happened in St. Vincent, the events in St. Vincent, as it relates to the election that just took place, cannot be viewed in isolation, meaning that it is not just a St. Vincent event. And there's a lot more I can add to that, but just by way of introduction, I would say these are the areas that come to mind. The whole question of power, absolute power. We've heard this many, many times that power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. So this thing of power. And finally, I will say the people. Hopefully, I'm hoping that we can have Miss King, Adriana King, to join us. Because at the end of the day, what it boils down to, the power rests in the hands of the people. Whether it is 25 years, 30 years, 40 years, as we have seen in even more developed democracies than ours. What happened with that great wall that came down many years ago, and what have happened across the globe. The power resides in the people. So I think it's a great conversation to have. As I said, there will be a number of pundits and commentators will be commentating on this for a long time to come. And I think at the end of the day, we will all learn something from it. We'll all want to see, well, what lessons it teaches us and see how we can, at the end of the day, grow together in unity as a unified people, both individually in our respective countries and in general as a Caribbean body. So that's all I would say for now, and I will expand on any of the areas that I mentioned and make a couple more interjections as the conversation unfolds this evening.
All right, Alvin, thank you very much indeed for your sort of opening remarks, as it were. We have some persons joining us here. So again, we want to welcome each and every one of you on the live feed at this time. And again, please just help us share that information by you sharing that live feed with your contact out there. Zed, just before you basically tell us anything more I want us now to run a clip, short in nature, that Brother Zed Lloyd did, I think, the week leading up to the election in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So we're going to try to get that clip now on screen, and then Zed, we will ask you to, chime in based on what you said then, you prophesied then, and how it panned out in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Let's see if we can just get that. Yes, I think it is.
I'm out here, and I'm pondering on St. Vincent, and Ralph. Yeah, I'm pondering on Ralph and a broader collective of, leaders. But I'm pondering on Ralph, and politically, things are one thing, but to me, what bothers me the most about Ralph is the fact that Ralph is even still fighting to be in politics and in leadership. And that bothers me, because I don't think at this point in Ralph's life that this is about St. Vincent. This cannot be about St. Vincent. This cannot be about St. Vincent. This is about Ralph. This is an addiction, a power that, it is a bigger dynamic at play in this thing. Transitionship, already is supposed to have established, come on, man. When is Ralph gonna So I think, to me, Vincentians, no matter what political side you're on, there's a broader message that needs to be sent, bro. Ralph needs to be told to go home. Yeah, I think it's a national vote on that issue. It's, because Ralph doesn't seem to have the capacity to stop himself from wanting leadership. He doesn't seem to have the capacity anymore. So it's time for Vinci to deal with this, man, Tell Ralph thank you for his faults and his trials, but I think, it's your country. I'm Dominican. I cannot, but in regional shape and how we need to forward and how we looking for a future, it's time for Gonzalez to pack it up, Richard. Vinci need to send a clear message, bro. New vibes, you know what I mean? New vibes. God bless.
All right. God bless indeed, Zed Lloyd. Zed, can I say that you were a prophet then? Any thoughts from you, Zed, as we await Miss Adriana King out of St. Vincent and the Grenadines?
Lofty, part of why that reason that video came out was, you see, to develop an argument against Ralph for me is somewhat difficult, because you see, the tradition Ralph comes from in his beginning is my kind of tradition. Ralph came on the scene from a point of view of compassion and empathy and a moral sort of leadership concept. Ralph didn't need to be in politics to be rich. You know what I mean? Ralph didn't need to get involved politically in St. Vincent for him to have a better life. So when Ralph entered the scene, Ralph was like a breath of fresh air. Philosophically, consciously, his level mentally was something that we needed in the region. And for a long time in his leading, he was a success story. He was a success story. I think Ralph did some excellent things for St. Vincent. But when you come into leadership, you have three options, three premises, Lofty. The moral, empathetic, empathy concept. Then you have the materialistic concept, which is your money and getting better in life as a leader. And then you have the power construct. The power construct is the most destructive, where all rationality goes out the window and you just get hooked on power. And that is the part that caught Ralph. It wasn't an absence of empathy or none of those things. Ralph was a good brother. It wasn't it was the power, the addiction to power. That happens. Alvin talked about the terms limits thing. It's critical, not just for the country, but to save the individual soul. Because Ralph could have been saved if those kinds of institutions, articles were in our constitutions. Because by Ralph's second term, Ralph had done excellent for St. Vincent, and not having the CDI, even the CDI. If Ralph had run the CDI in the original Ralph concept of Ralph, St. Vincent would have been the most successful CDI program. I promise you that. Because the process of leadership and was from a different dilemma, a different dimension, but power corrupted, and that is what happened to Ralph. And so I had to find a way to attack Ralph because Ralph was deserving of being attacked. You know, but I couldn't come from the sort like the scary dimension and the corrupt dimension. I'm not saying Ralph hasn't absorbed this level of corruption because of time, but inherently as an individual, Ralph was not on that kind of corruption pathway of intent and a natural state of how you operate and fooling people and those things. And that is one of the reasons that Ralph stayed long in St. Vincent. It wasn't about stealing elections per se in that extreme kind of level. I mean, corruption happens everywhere. But the people of St. Vincent had a natural, loving relationship with Ralph. They were not coerced in that I need to come and get my $300 every month, or if I speak, my child is going to get a scholarship or some kind of thing. There wasn't that extremity in the case of St. Vincent, especially in Ralph's initial stages. But when you reach that stage of power, where your whole rational self is lost, man, it's only the people that can stop you. It is only the people that can stop you. And so that was my issue on that video, to make it clear that it was a moral right of Vincentians to get rid of Ralph Gonzalez. And I think they did that in the best manner possible. In the best manner possible.
So Zed, just to piggyback on at least one or 2 points that you made, in terms of what you saw Zed Lloyd coming from St. Vincent under the leadership of Mr. Gonzalez. Where do you think and why did you think Ralph went wrong?
Time. Listen, I was having this conversation the other day with this kid, helping him solve a problem mathematically. And so then he was talking about, but sir, in life, all these things, but where do you use it in life? And I'm freaking out because just look at the basic gradient, Lofty. A gradient is rise over run. And a gradient tells you so much about life that very few people don't realize: the negative, the positive gradient, the negative slope. Ralph's problem is Ralph reached the plateau and he did not realize he had plateaued. You see, and when you get into, and you have to know when you've plateaued, you have to know when your gradient turns negative. And that is his problem. So the positive that he did, he negated it by being on the thing where his ideas had run out. He was out of touch and et cetera, and still trying to lead. The party could have survived if Ralph had introduced new leadership and tell the people, I have reached my peak. Here is what I recommend. And not this thing of your son and this kind of aristocratic garbage that these brothers are trying to establish, like Roosevelt and those guys. And you better get the message, because ain't going to be no legacy in Dominica for you and your son. I promise you that. You understand? But that is what happened, Lofty. When these guys don't follow the basic mathematical principles, you rise, you plateau, and you fall. And you have to know when to leave. And it's not just in Ralph, in Dominica right now, it's the same thing affecting us, both from the political leadership and both from oppositional leadership. We have a bunch of people who've been in politics so goddamn long that they cannot let go. They're entrenched in power. Not about the country, power. You understand? And these things are destabilizing us, they're destabilizing movements, destabilizing political parties. And part of the reason that keeps Roosevelt's carrot getting more powerful in the country is because some of these jokers cannot let go. They cannot let go. They cannot go and retire and park themselves somewhere and let the younger generation deal with and do what they have to do. So the problem is it's a dilemma across the region. Across the region. So I want us to use Ralph, but we have to. Yeah, because it's a lot of jokers that are just like Ralph across the region, and not just in the controlling party or in the government, in oppositional circles. These guys are an impediment to solution in the region also, across the board. So we have to talk to all of them, same way like Ralph. Time's up. Time's up.
Zed said time's up. Alvin,
yeah,
do you
man,
think?
pack it up, man.
No, I agree 100% with Zed. I mean, and Zed made the point quite well there. This thing you call power. I mean, I've read, I keep reading it and reference it all the time. There is this book by the author Robert Greene. I think Zed must have, I'm sure Zed you might have come across it, The 48 Laws of Power.
Powerful stuff, brother.
The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. And I think that is a book that some of these leaders may have to take, you know, and read and just to understand it, get an understanding. Because that's exactly what happens. When you get to that point of power, and it's not just in a political party, it's in any institution or organization.
Exactly.
The same will apply in the church. It applies in business. And one of the worst legacies a leader can leave for his or her organization is not to be able to create the environment whereby you allow for an exit strategy. So even in business, sometimes you find that folks will get into business, whether it may be a family business or a non-family business, and there is no strategy or no plan in place for an exit strategy. So you find either the owner of that business, whether it be the father or the whatever it is, will drag this thing down to the end. And no strategy in terms of handing it over, passing the baton, and say, well, look, I have played my part. I have brought it up to that point. Let me now hand it over to someone else that can take it. Now, what has resulted by Ralph hanging on to that power and not relinquishing it is that he has placed the United Labour Party in a really bad shape now. So whoever is taking over now must take over and try to build a party that is now decimated, mashed up, as they say. He has mashed it up. And that too, in a way, was something that happened to some extent under the Freedom Party, you know, Eugenia. Because the Freedom Party served for 3 terms, and towards the end, Eugenia herself, I wouldn't say she was wrapped up in power, but you had that situation where there was that serious fighting of the leadership. And the rest is history. We see what happened. Then we see it happening in the United Workers' Party. So Zed is right. At some point as a leader, you have to tell yourself, look, I have done my best. I have done what the people wanted me to do. Now's the time for me to hand this thing over to someone who can take it to that next level. And I think if Ralph had done that, it is very likely that his party would not ended up in the way it ended up.
Exactly.
So I think it's a lesson for all of us to learn. It's a lesson for leaders to learn in the political arena. At some point in time, you have to exit. And as I said earlier too, I think what I think the positive side, if there is a positive side, is on the people side. Because the people at some point is going to say, hey, we have had enough, which is what the Vincentian people did and Grenadines. We've had enough, and do not underestimate where the power lies when it comes to those political situations. It rests with the people.
Alvin, let me just sort of stretch your point to Dominica. I know we're discussing the situation with the just concluded election in Antigua, and I just got a note from one of our guests here, Miss King. Most likely she will be joining us shortly. She too is having some technical difficulties, but she's trying her best to sort it out. And once that issue is sorted out, she most likely will be here with us to give us her perspective on the just concluded elections in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But Alvin, you touched on it. Zed, you said it right. Power corrupts, absolutely, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Alvin, I am living in Dominica. Zed, I am living in Dominica. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt that exactly what you and Zed are espousing here this afternoon in terms of when a leader, like we saw Ralph did, time comes to go, that they choose not to go. And obviously the inevitable will happen in that the people now, where the real power resides, will tell them in no uncertain terms, you know something, leader, your time has gone and your time has come. And we are going to exercise that right. In Dominica, Alvin, I know there are certain leaders, and I'm not talking about now government. There are certain people who are in the opposition circles in Dominica. And I want to be very direct tonight, who are operating on that or in that philosophy and mindset like Ralph and others, who, when their time has come and gone, they still want to hang around and be that impediment for the forward movement of the masses moving on. And so we are giving these leaders who are the government to the blows. But the people, some of the people in opposition, they too, they are directly in that course of action. And so it goes across the board. So I will end by saying, like my friend Lumumba keeps saying in Kenya, every good dancer, you have to know when to leave the stage. And if you don't leave, if you choose not to leave when your time is over, when your time is up, especially as a leader playing a leading role, then whatever else you did before, you will end up, I was going to use a strong word, but I'll tone it down. You will mess it up.
Well, you will dance without music. You'll be on the floor dancing and no music. Have you ever tried doing that? Have you tried doing that, Lofty, to dance without music?
That is the perfect picture. That is the perfect picture. So, folks, I'm seeing here we have now Miss King in our presence. Let me say a pleasant good evening to Miss Adriana King. Are you hearing me? Can you see us tonight from St. Vincent?
Hearing you loud and clear. Good to be here.
Wow. Miss King, a pleasant good evening to you again. Thank you for accepting our invitation, for being here with us tonight on the Civic Vibes program. Just to give us an idea, and that is from your perspective, that is. We are not asking you to crunch any numbers for us tonight. Just what Adrian King saw, witnessed, or experienced on the ground before, during, and maybe even after you guys' general elections. But before you go there, King, how are you doing? It has been some time.
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I am right now just basically focusing on pushing a book that I've written and just keeping myself busy teaching.
And what is the topic of that book, may I ask?
Oh, it's a book for children who are writing the CPA exam, but it could be used for younger students as well as older students. So it's all about writing. It's called Let's Write. So it focuses on the expository writing, the descriptive writing, and things along that line. Okay,
let's write. I hope I can get a copy of my hands on that book so that I can read some of your works.
Oh, that's easy.
but even before Miss King comes in, though, Lofty, on behalf of Civic Vibes, we really want to say congratulations to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I really want to say that before you even interject.
You.
Congratulations to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I think what happened there gave us hope across the region, because that is one of the things that have been lacking lately. People lack hope, and they fail. Sometimes they get to the point of wanting to give up. They say, boy, am I really going to get to that promised land? Will I really climb at the top of that mountain peak? and be able to say, well, I have arrived. And I think what happened gave us hope. And in particular, the young people of the region.
Oh, yes.
Because when I looked at some of the clips that I saw what transpired in St. Vincent, I saw a mass of young people.
Mm-hmm.
So in your sharing with us, I would like you to share that with us as well. How do you saw the young people got engaged? Because time and time again, and love to know that I'm a young person fanatic. He knows how I feel about young people. We tend to say, oh, young people don't care. Young people not interested. Young people on their phone. Young people in their CO. Young people don't want to vote, blah, blah, blah. But I saw young people engaged. So I want you to really zero in on that for us as well. So I just wanted to make that opening salvo before you come in.
All right. Alvin, thank you very much. Zed, I know you're there as well. Zed is part of the program. Zed, just some few thoughts before to Adriana King, that is, before we turn across to her to hear from her.
Yeah, well, I'm just gonna let Adriana, take me on that journey, Tell us what you will, Tell us what you will.
Okay. So it's quite a mouthful. So I hope you have patience. And at any point you wish to interrupt and ask me a question, please feel free to do so. Now, the campaign started off, I think the New Democratic Party really started the campaign season because they had their players all lined up long before the ULP had theirs, As a matter of fact, I think by December last year, they had all candidates. The last candidate to come in, I believe, was Philip Jackson in the Maricopa constituency. And that was a final 15. And the amazing thing about the NDP's team this time around is that it looked different from what they had before. Now, one of the things former Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves used to brag about was that he had the young team. NDP had the old men and he had the young team. But this time, the New Democratic Party was able to bring on at least 5 new candidates, if my numbers are correct, and they were young people. So you had now this team that you would lambaste all the time and talk about. They have old people. They brought a fresh slate, and that fresh slate included young people, and not just any, young person, so to speak, but these were men who brought different skill sets to the campaign. And so that was another plus, because young professionals were able now to say, oh, I know him. Okay, I can see him working, or see, whatever they can do. And so the NDP, like I said, started their campaign early because they had their players lined up. And I think this was definitely not something that Gonsalves expected. Another shock for him was the fact that when he called the elections, when he actually gave the date, figuratively, in less than a minute, the NDP was rolling out T-shirts. It's as though they had T-shirts in a barrel, in a box under the bed or something. But he announced the elections, and he wasn't even ready. Because I could tell you for a fact, even up to 7 days or so after he announced the campaign, their T-shirts were still being printed, but yet you have people already walking around in NDP T-shirts, and the songs started coming out. But remember, like I said, they were already on the ground doing work. And they started hosting activities that were geared towards engaging young people. So there was something called, I think it was a 1080 line. There was a line. And the whole thing was, let's talk and more vibes. So it was a matter of engaging the young people, but the potential candidates or the candidates were there. And so they were able to mingle and have one-on-one conversations and so forth. Now, somebody who comes to mind is Chevron John, who ran in the constituency of North Whitwood. And she's one person who has always had activities in her constituency to engage young people. So she had cricket competitions, she had netball competitions. So she always had, I think she had a road relay at one point. So she always had activities that kept the young people engaged. So definitely this time around, the New Democratic Party was able to mobilize young people quite quickly and easily. And of course, there were the voices on Facebook that helped to keep the young people engaged, helped to push the issues, and to push them in a way that was relatable to them. And on the point of being relatable, one of the main things that worked against the ULP this time around is the fact that they were out of touch. They have become arrogant. And it's as though many of them just felt that automatically, because they were with Ralph Gonsalves and the ULP, they were the ruling mouths in Parliament, that they would get the vote. And so they started campaigning with that sort of thing. Like, look at me, I'm minister of this, I'm minister of that. You have to vote for me. Why are you going to vote for this person over there who's never been, on the leading side of government? Why are you going to waste your vote? And even our former minister of agriculture, there's a snippet that's going around now where he basically said that, you're wasting your vote on this person. And if you do that, you're going to be on the losing side. And he ends with boo, a boo. And now people are booing, but not the other side. And so you have that whole engagement, you have the arrogance of the former ruling regime. So much so, one of the candidates for the ULP was in a constituency, not Leeward, and he got into this altercation with a police officer. And at one point, we see him seating himself on the floor. And the next 15 or so minutes, here comes a news article online stating that he was, pushed out by this biased policeman, and painting this picture that this policeman was so aggressive towards him. And we had to mobilize online and say to people, here, what? If you're in North Leeward and you have not gone out to vote, go out now. Because what we see here is this police officer being set up for dismissal. Because obviously, had that candidate for the ULP got his seat, that police officer would have been out of a job. So I must say that people moved. And when we're talking about movement, the question will be why so many people voted against the ULP. And my simple answer for that would be that people wanted a change. They wanted a change. It has been 24 plus years, and every single election cycle, you would come and tell us, oh, you're going to build a hospital, and you're going to build a bridge, and you're going to build a road. And it was the same things over and over again. And then when we put you back there, and I say we because obviously it's a collective, they're not getting my vote, but okay. So we put you back there, and you go and you sit down and you do nothing. And then coming down to the last lap, you see trucks going with sand and with blocks and things, projects projects galore just start happening. And so people were looking and they said, but wait, this is the same thing that you did last time. You came in and you promised that you would do X, Y, and Z. You didn't do it for the 3-4 years leading up, but then at last, you make a mad rush. And I think Vincentians were on to them this time, and they were just totally fed up. So some supporters of the ULP actually did vote against them. And I've made a post on Facebook saying that the NDP needs to be aware that even though supporters of the ULP, voted against them, it doesn't mean that they're no NDP supporters. But they too were tired of the victimization. And victimization under the Ralph Gonsalves regime has become too much of an everyday occurrence. For those of you who don't know, I myself am I don't like to use the word victim, but I've been a target of Ralph Gonsalves for the past 4+ years, simply because I went out on a protest line. This bogus charge was created that I blocked him from Parliament. It was amended a number of times. It was stayed by one magistrate. The DPP appealed it. It's now in the appeal court. And it is now a matter of saying that I thought of doing something to try to block him. And because of this charge, I have been barred from my job. I have been barred from traveling, and I'm on half pay. Plus, you have hundreds of civil servants, teachers, policemen who were put out of their jobs because of the vaccine mandate. And these government officials kept insisting, but they didn't lose their jobs, as in they weren't fired. You know, they're the ones who basically jeopardized their livelihood. And people saw this. And what I would say too is that they failed to remember that people have connections, that we have a community. So if you fire Mrs. Jones because of your vaccine mandate, you have to remember that Mrs. Jones might have children or might have siblings, and these siblings and these children, they would have their own connections elsewhere, and they too will have connections. So you have, even though they were not directly impacted by what you did, they know of Mrs. Jones and they know of her suffering. And Vincentians empathized with each other. I think that happened to a large extent this elections. And of course, the opposition, their base came out. And one of the reasons why I think the opposition's base came out is the fact that Ralph was issuing a threat to the leader of the opposition, the now Right Honorable Dr. Godwin Friday, and the representative for Central Kingston. And those are two areas that are NDP strongholds. And what he was basically saying to those constituents was this: if you vote for these men, you'll be wasting your votes because they're not citizens of St. Vincent and Grenadines, they are citizens of Canada. And so he was pushing this and pushing this. But like I said, these are two NDP strongholds, and no way were they going to allow anybody to dictate to them who would represent them. I think I've said a lot.
What were these two constituencies? You said what were they? Which one?
Okay, one was Central Kingston, and that's Fitzgerald Bramble, and the other Northern Grenadines, which is Dr. Lorraine Godwin Friday.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Who's our new Prime Minister?
Yeah,
I know. Yes, I too, just following up on the elections in St. Vincent, I heard of those sort of go up attempts at these two candidates. So I must tell you what you're saying is factually correct. And I think the people basically turned on Ralph based on his sentiments or intentions after the election. So yes.
Yeah. And something else that he was pushing, I could say plainly, in my opinion, he was inciting violence because he kept saying things to his supporters, you know, go out and deal with them. And, you know, it was all about attacking somebody and dealing with somebody. And again, I think Vincent just said, you know what? No, we're not this. We're not this type of people. So you just need to take this rhetoric and go. We've had enough of you in this.
Yeah. All right, Miss King, I know you have said a lot tonight, and thank you very, very much. We appreciate that useful information coming from you being on the ground. Folks, tonight we are experiencing some technical difficulties, I must say, but there's a number you can call into the program just in case you want your voice to be aired here. And that number is 245-2396. That is my telephone number. I'll plug that number in the feed, the live feed, in just a while. But Adriana, I want Zed and Alvin and obviously the guests, the participants there, they're talking already, to sort of ask you or engage you more tonight. So
No
Zed,
problem.
Zed, you listened. Any thoughts so far? Any comments from you, question wise as well?
Well, there were a few fundamental points that I think were very critical, and which and aligns with Dominica in many ways. She talked about new faces, for instance, and the impact they had. And in my intro, I kind of alluded to that. You know that we have people who are, and it's not just leaders. We have people who are parliamentarians for 3 sessions, bro. You know, we're talking about 2 term maybe for leaders. We have parliamentarians that had 15 years. You know what I'm saying? And these guys need to retire, man. These guys need to retire. These guys also need to let go of that Ralph syndrome. You understand? Their time's up. You know, you come in trying to nominate new leadership. You should be bringing us your replacement. You know, your replacement.
I think so. That was another gripe with Gonsalves, because in years gone, he kept promising this would be my last run. This would be my last run, and people were eager to get Saboto Caesar into that spot of leading the ULP. But Gonsalves had his mindset that it was going to be his son Camilo or no one. And so even at their last convention, when people were there shouting, Caesar, 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 because they thought that on that day they were going to elect, a new leader.
Yeah.
And he stood up there and he said, no, I'm taking you to the next elections.
Yeah.
And so even his own people right then and there realized, no, you are just power hungry. And if we keep you here, going back to your whole idea of the young people, if we keep you, the young people in the party are not going to thrive. And so I think that too led to some people just saying, you know what? Goodbye. Y'all are not ready. Saboto is not pushing for leadership, and we don't want Camilo. So what is the sense?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then you talked about the idea of doing things in constituencies.
Are you hearing me?
Yeah, we're hearing you. Yes.
In there, we have a caller who may want to engage Miss King tonight. Caller, yes, good evening. Go right ahead. You're on. Caller, good evening.
No, I do not know. I know you from the phone. I'm not hearing. Are you there, of course?
Yes, I'm hearing you loud and clear. Go right ahead.
Hello.
Caller, go right ahead. We are hearing you.
Yeah, good evening to you and your family. I listened to that I made similarity with Dominica, and he's calling for a change of faces in Dominica. I want to know how then we reconcile that with the fact that in Dominica we have several juvenile candidates, if I put it that way, who are incapable of conducting themselves as honorable as the term should be, and are around the place bringing disrepute to the parliament in Dominica. So how do you reconcile that statement for new faces with the new faces that are in the Labour Party? Second question, in St. Vincent, I think the Prime Minister has paved the way, or legislation that we passed, whatever it was, that a person could leave the job, run for the political office if they want. If they lost, they come back to the job without fear. I want to know if that is the fact, how much did that influence the election, the slate of the NDC, and how much that influenced the slate of candidates, and ultimately the result of the election with the candidates they had, considering that they had no fear, they could have gone to the election and come back. So tell me, in your opinion, how did that influence, and the fact that they were able to select the candidates so early, unlike Dominica, where people are afraid of victimization and they cannot identify themselves until a month or two before the election, or the election has been called. So tell me those two things.
All right, caller.
Lofty, let me answer the Dominican part of it before we go to her, please.
Yes, no problem, Zed. Right on.
Yeah. Good evening, brother. Thanks for your questions. Where you talked about the new faces and candidates being inappropriate and being able. These candidates are inappropriate, brother, because these candidates were not political people oriented people. These candidates were taken and just thrown into politics, bro. You cannot call these people candidates. These people are bought, sort of almost like a materialistic construct. They didn't come into political sense. You think this woman from Dodan or wherever she's from, that woman there, or some of these people, you really think these people would normally have become into politics? I mean, that is the problem. This process by which these people arrogantly just choose people's representative for them is what is creating that problem. So it's not a question of new faces. It's a question of allowing independent new faces, progressive new faces, people who are conditioned into politics, who are prepared to do national service, and not just this idea of just going and pick people so that you can control them, pay them their money, and they hold a thing. So I want you to make that distinction when you correlate to Dominica. Dominica is a whole different situation, bro. A whole different situation.
Thank you very much, Zed, for your response on that. Ms. King, I don't know if you heard the question fully from the caller, but just to rehash in a nutshell, that caller is saying that, or is asking the question, whether there was a situation, or there is rather the situation in your country whereby public servants, people who work for the state, if their intent is to run for public office, could resign from their position, go run for public office, and if needs be, if they lost, then fall back into that service. And if that is the case, how you think that situation sort of helped the NDC, that is, to put out, as you said, the candidates much earlier than the ULP?
Okay, so the agreement does exist, it is there, but I'll tell you this much. When, for instance, Chevron John in North Windward, as a matter of fact, before Chevron John, there was Addison Bash and there was Elvis Daniel and someone else whose name eludes me right now. They were teachers, and there is an agreement between the government and the teachers union that allows teachers to take time to campaign. And obviously, as I said, if they lose, they get back their job. And those three male teachers, did not get back their jobs. So when Chevron John stepped in as a teacher, she too was then placed basically on the bread line. She did not get back her job, and she was offered a senatorial position with the New Democratic Party. Now, here we have 2025, and some members, well, for instance, Dr. Grace, what's Grace's surname? I think it's Walker. But she ran against John in North Windward. She was a government employee, and there's another who was also a government employee who ran in Northern Grenadines. So when these two candidates stepped forward, we now saw or heard more talk about this law allowing you to campaign and so forth. And whether or not that impacted on the NDP's campaign, that's the other question. I would say no, because of the new candidates, only two of them were current civil servants. And one of them, which is Philip Jackson in Mariquo, he had expressed interest in 2020. So basically, there was only one new person who came about or came on board this time around who would have been protected by that law.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss King. If I may, Lofty, thank you again, Miss King. Great analysis and update as to what transpired and to kind of give us a sense.
Thank you.
You have unpacked a lot, and quite frankly, I'm not sure if who is listening or how intent they're listening, but you have given us a template. I think based on what you've presented tonight, you have presented a template that I would hope politicians on both sides of the fence may want to use. You talk about preparedness.
Mm-hmm.
Preparedness. how prepared the NDP was.
Yes.
And that is critical in any campaign,
Correct.
in any political party, in anybody trying, you know, any party wants to vie for office and present themselves. You talk about mobilization, getting on the ground, mobilizing, doing the work. You talk about the youth vote. You said, let's talk, more vibes. I love that. Let's talk, more vibes. I like that tagline. You talk about community engagement, how engaged the people were. You talk about the use of social media, that when what transpired with the police officer, the young people quickly engage social media and say, hey, let's get moving, let's get working, and they work on the ground. I think these are fundamental principles.
Correct.
Fundamental principles that can take any political party to the finish line.
I agree with you 100%. I had the pleasure of working closely with one of the new candidates, and he's a young guy in West St. George, Kashaka Cupid. And the basic thing that we did in that constituency was to ensure that the canvassing on the ground was tight, as in every area of that constituency was touched. And my role was basically to control what was done on social media and so forth. And so what I tried to do was to show people exactly what he was doing on the ground. And by doing so, people started looking. And those in the diaspora, especially who can't be on the ground to vote, some would say to you, you know, I'm seeing this, go and vote for this guy. That's what happens when you engage social media effectively. You will not get the vote from those overseas unless they come home. But because they're seeing you and they're seeing your work, they then mobilize their people who are on the ground. And once your social media campaign kicks off, young people are going to come and look to see what you're doing. And once they like what you're doing, once you are engaging and you have a message and your message is properly crafted, that's it.
Yeah. No, you're right. But let me also say, though, having said that, let me also say, so you made a point too, the arrogance of the ULP and the Prime Minister. And earlier on, I'm not sure how much of our earlier conversation you heard, but that's what happens when people get consumed with power. It goes up to your head. We have in Dominica's case, for example, you have our Prime Minister that have made a lot of, how should I put it, statements that are just not right.
Yeah.
I mean, you go on the platform and you tell people it's none of your goddamn business. No longer constitution will.
We've had people here being called names like dirty dog.
Your Labour Party get their money, it's your damn business. I mean, all kinds of statements like that. That is clearly an indication where that power gets so you get so caught up with that power that you have no longer have respect for the people, and that can be your detriment. And even I heard the former Prime Minister, Dr. Gonzalez, I heard him addressing his supporters after the thing yesterday, I believe it was. And here are a couple of things that he did. One, he didn't congratulate them, obviously. I don't expect him to do that. But he didn't wish them well. He wished for them to that they would fail. I mean, I was so blown away by that.
Yeah. But if they fail, does not mean that this country is suffering.
And then he went on to display a posture of resistance that I expect to get that. And if I don't get that, we're not going to sit down and be pushed around, and we're not going. That power still is in him. He hasn't even humbled himself.
So he hasn't.
Say, well, here it is. And I felt bad for him because earlier, as I said, Dr. Gonzalez, in his start, is a good guy, as an individual. You put it this way, a good man, meant well. But he has allowed that political power to consume him so much that even in the hour when he has been defeated, he is still there fighting like a grumble old man. and
Did you hear him
wishing bad
say?
for the administration.
Did you
So
hear him say that he would be attacking, those who try to victimize people?
yes, all these comments that he was making, and I don't think that helps. So again, it is a message for those who are currently in power, who are hearing, and who's listening to that program, to understand that when these things happen, learn from them. And as I said, his legacy, I'm afraid he's not living a good legacy. And that is not good.
No, you talk about legacy. And I'll tell you this much. Gonzalez is somebody who I have known for years. We have had long conversations. And one of the things he told me in my younger days was that his worry was mainly about how he would be remembered, his legacy. And in 2021, I wrote him a little open letter and said to him plainly that his time for a graceful exit has gone and that he will depart politics in shame and disgrace. And here we are now, and we're just simply looking at this man fall apart, and he just cannot stop himself.
You know, I'm glad you love to you. Gonna say something. Go ahead.
Just before you come in, Zed, I'm monitoring the feed, and I want to take as many questions and comments from the feed as well, because this is part of the conversation, and we have to rope them in as well. Miss, someone is asking you there whether there were any radio stations. Let me see if I could get to that comment here. Was there any public radio stations or other public platforms that were banned from basically covering the opposition and rallies and electoral events?
Okay, so when the ULP came into office years ago, we had, what should I put it? How should I put this? A great shift in what was allowed. So for instance, we have our national broadcasting station. Before the ULP, both ruling regime and opposition were allowed to be on there. But after Gonzalez came into government, came into power, that ended. So the national broadcasting station only carries ULP programming. There is also the Star Radio that they created that carries their programming. And there's a station called Nice Radio that usually carries just the New Democratic Party's programs. So that's basically how radio is divided here. And of course, there's some of the mainstream ones like Boom FM and Hot FM. They just basically play music and they will talk about the issues, but they try to appear balanced more than anything else. I think I could remember Boom being used to broadcast ULP campaigns. I remember seeing those.
Right, thank you. All right, Zed, I'm monitoring the live feed, so go ahead in the meantime. Thank you.
Yeah, you see, I wanted to again do that contrast between St. Vincent and Dominica. Now, we have Ralph here, who his dilemma is power. He lost all his logic, all his rationality, and of course that comes with age too. You know, so there's a whole lot of insecurities come into play, but it's so sad.
Sure.
But and so now when you come to Dominica now, Dominica's issue is not just an issue of power, anymore. Where I just want to. It's now an issue of I need to stay in power, so that it's not just about falling from grace. It's the persecution and the prosecution that I'm open to if I lose. So our situation is even more dire because we have a desperate leadership. That is
we
not
did
just a question of,
we did too.
It's not just a question of I want to stay in power. It's a question of, boy, if I lose power, I'm in trouble.
Remember, during the last couple weeks of our campaign, here comes Anil Roberts from Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Doubles and coffee. Remember, just a few months before this, Ralph is telling Vincent, oh, my son Storm had a boat and now he has a bigger boat. And here comes Anil to tell Vincentians basically, well, it's not just a boat and then a bigger boat.
Is that
But now we've also heard talks about condominiums and so forth. But now you have 3 houses in Trinidad in gated communities, and everybody like, okay, so what's going on here? So you have that investigation happening in Trinidad. And then he starts, which is our former prime minister, starts talking about foreign operatives. He's always talking about foreign operatives, but now it's Trinidadian foreign operatives on the ground in St. Vincent and Grenadines creating mischief. And Anil had him down to the T with his little, and we've seen that, for years, where he would always look over his shoulder as though, well, we thought he was just looking for agreement. But then Ali was like, no, that's when he's lying. That's when he's lying. And so all of this now helped to open Vincentian's eyes. We're like, okay, this is why you're trying so hard to stay in this position. You have secrets. And I don't know if you know this, but his wife has a number of shops at our airport. People would say all of them, but she has most of them. And there's a question about whether or not she's been paying rent. Because after all, her husband is the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and Grenadines. So was she paying rent? We don't know. And all of this, like I said, had people wondering, had people asking themselves, what else is there? Plus, his son came out years ago and told us that there was a $95 million that wasn't missing. He just couldn't find it. So Vincentian had to deal with all of these issues, and they're thinking, well, now we need to get you out of there quick because there are too many things happening, especially money related, and we don't have answers. There's no accountability.
Lastly, I want to just touch on the spontaneous aspect that you touched on, especially that moment on election day and how critical spontaneity is in struggle. And one of the things that have been happening in my homeland is we have this sort of, I don't know where that come from, man. We used to be a people who used to make use of advantages, where momentum is never expedited in that process of oppositional politics in Dominica. The moment comes and the spontaneity never follows up. It never brings results. You know, it's always a shooting in your foot. Every time we get a momentum moment, this goddamn opposition loses it. It's never exploited for an advancement. And I'm glad that you showed how critical that is. And it really is. Because in struggle, we talk about power in people. The most powerful power in people is spontaneous power.
True.
And if you as an oppositional movement cannot utilize spontaneous power of the masses, then there's no way you're going to win an executing struggle.
I'll tell you this much. It came down to the point where Vincentians made up their minds that whatever areas the opposition fell short in, we would pick up the slack. And I remember looking at a comment on somebody's Facebook profile. And the person said basically this, I'm not going to call the name of the candidate. Let's say Lofty. So the person basically said, y'all think I'm going to make Lofty keep me on the roll for another 5 years? I campaigning for myself in my constituency. I go in and do it. And so people adopted that attitude.
Ownership. Ownership.
Yes, they owned the campaign, which was one of Ralph's slogan years ago. Own the campaign, own the job. But this time, Vincentian truly owned the campaign. And I'm not saying that the NDP's campaign wasn't a good one. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that what people saw, where they fell short, people decided, I am going to do this.
It was the people's.
Yeah. They needed to have a response to things that were being said. People started putting out memes and they started putting out videos, and business people started commenting on Facebook. This is something that has never happened in our elections prior. Business people started commenting on Facebook, and some of them, I know one young lady who's a hairdresser, she started doing her Facebook lives. Now, could you imagine putting your everything on the line to campaign against a government? And so when this started happening now, others started realizing, okay, I have to vote, because if I don't vote, she's going to get victimized.
Mm.
I have to vote because if I don't vote, he is going to get victimized.
Yeah.
And that moved people. I could honestly say, people, even now, my inbox, my WhatsApp full because people were saying to me, Adriana, I voted for you. I voted for you and my husband. I voted for you and my mother who they fired. I voted for you and my sister who lost her job. I voted for you and the teachers. I voted for you and the police. People came out and they did little bits of campaigning that they thought needed to be done.
Let me take a feed from one of our people on the line. And they asked the question there. How is St. Vincent voters list managed and sanitized? And you could answer that question as well in terms of how did the electoral commission, whatever you guys call it over there, I'm not sure if that's the same term, how did they, what was their role and help to facilitate what transpired?
The word used there was sanitized. And I immediately recall a post from a lady stating that her dead son's name was on the list. And not only that, our new list, I can't remember the exact figure, but according to our new list, about, say, 75 or 80% of our population could vote, which is totally ridiculous. Which means that there's so many names on there that need to become out.
I saw something that put it at 103,520.
Right. And our population
is under 100,000.
That's about 100, sometimes they say 106, sometimes they say 104. But you can't have a voting population of 103,000 people. So in relation to sanitizing, no, that's not done. Hopefully this new administration would clean things up. But for now, we have a very messy list. And that's another selling point or another campaign point that people on the ground use. We basically said, you know what, go out and vote. Because if they stuff the ballot boxes, you want the figure to be so ridiculous that it shows up immediately that something is off.
Let me just add a follow-up. So would you say a lot of young people, you all were able to get a lot of young people to register to vote? New
that
voters?
Did happen also. That happened also. Okay. Young people did go out and get registered. That did happen.
Okay. Adriana, you made a point a while ago about it rests on the new government. That is the mistake I don't want you to make, and I don't want St. Vincent to make. You see that movement, that people's movement, that build there? Build that.
Agree.
These conditions must not be expectant of government. We the people have to demand government. You understand? And
I always say the power lies in the people.
You understand this idea that about, well, it's them coming in? No, that same momentum then will have to be addressed at that new party.
Agreed.
Yeah, these things have to be changed. Constitutions have to be realigned. Use that momentum, use that momentum to create that thing, because that is what is lacking in the Caribbean. All these leaders come into a Westminster system that is totally advantageous to them, especially leadership. You understand? And we've been suffering on this thing, and none of these governments are making a move. And I think St. Vincent has a very important moment, because Ralph in is always whatever, but still he gave St. Vincent a sort of a philosophical concept, different than a lot of other areas, maybe not than Trinidad, maybe Barbados, St. Vincent, people, philosophically a little more tuned, than a lot of other places.
We seem to be now. We seem to be getting there.
Yeah.
I'm proud of my people for what they've done this elections. I am.
It is there. And so I want to really lay that to you and others. Build that movement. Build that movement, because we need a transformation of these constitutions in the goddamn region.
Oh, we definitely do.
You feel me? And so I hope St. Vincent can, set up that thing, man. Seriously. Lay the pressure on Friday and them from day one.
Yeah.
Another question on the feed. Someone is asking, what would you think is in store for persons like yourself and the other civil servants who were dismissed by Ralph? And I guess I can add to that, was there in any shape or form any commitment or any statement made by the NDP during the campaign to that effect?
Okay, so my situation is different because I have not been dismissed. I have interdicted. So, like I explained earlier, I'm on half pay. I've been barred from traveling and I have been barred from my job.
And that's going on for how many years now?
About almost 5 years.
Wow.
Almost 5 years.
Adrian, if I invite you to Dominica to bathe in some fresh water of ours, you can come.
I can't.
Okay,
So-
go ahead.
So that's
Continue.
my situation.
Uh-huh.
Now, the other public servants, teachers, police, etc., they were dismissed because of the vaccine mandate. And the New Democratic Party has already vowed that they would reinstate them with their full benefits and all that is due to them.
Right.
Respect.
Absolute. Good to know.
Respect.
Adriana, there's one question that I need to put to you, need to ask you, but we really want to extract, maximum from you tonight in terms of the time you spent, and we thank you for your time. In terms of Alvin touched on it earlier a bit, in terms of the confidence that you guys have in the process of you guys' election, how confident are you guys in your system? And secondly, we heard that very favorite line, yellow is the code. Where did it come from?
Well, that yellow is the code originated in Trinidad and Tobago in the their last elections.
Yes.
And that was basically an effort to activate social media influencers and get them going to push their message. And it was catchy. So it took off here. Everybody on Facebook was like, yellow is the code, yellow is the code. They got some catchy songs as well. And again, these are things that help to pull in the young people and to just build a vibe and to build a connection with people. It's easy to say yellow is the code. People pass each other and they would shout it to each other. And like I said, it's all over Facebook. You were asking also about our faith in the system. That was the other question.
Yes, in the process. Yeah,
Okay.
the
As in the electoral process.
Yes.
Well, the example I gave earlier, when I said to you that we basically made up our mind that we were going to go out and vote so that if anything were to happen, it would be seen. Because I've sat on numerous lives on Facebook and explained to Vincentians, look, we could have a population of 400 people. The New Democratic Party could win 500 votes, and the ULP will still come into that they've won by 700. So the way to counteract that is to ensure that you go out and vote. So we didn't have
you get out to vote. The DOTV strategy,
Yeah, we didn't have much faith in the system, especially since we've heard rumors in previous elections about boxes being stuffed with ballots from before. And of course, in North Leeward last elections, we had somebody winning by a single vote. And this was after how many recounts and how many ballots being thrown out. And then all of a sudden, hey, magically one vote.
That's good strategy. You need not say more on that for now. Let me tell you, let me ask you though. Yellow is the code. We had a young lady in Dominica called Yellow. Maybe she would have to copyright that. Yeah, we had a young lady back home they call Yellow. So she would be glad to know that. But let me ask a question though. In terms of Vincentians who lived overseas, what kind of influence or impact, whatever you want to call it, that Vincentians in the diaspora had in the election? I mean,
I would like to see that they had a great impact because Vincentians at home depend a lot on their families in the diaspora for assistance. And I know of one young lady who inboxed me, for instance, and she said, look, I am not there to vote, but I made sure I told my children to go out and vote for the NDP. And if you remember earlier, when I was speaking about the whole social media importance, I said that when you are campaigning on the ground and you keep it on social media, those in the diaspora are seeing you and they're building confidence in you. And they start campaigning for you too. And they tell, they have little Facebook posts and their videos, and they tell their friends and family at home, look, I see this guy here. He seems to be a good fellow. Make sure you vote for him. So I think that they have had a great impact on our electoral process.
What is your policy with regards foreign voters in St. Vincent? You have how's their involvement? I mean, is that
they don't vote
unless
they come home. So what you would find is that the ruling regime would send for students or send for people in different countries, and they would come home. And I remember somebody saying to me that there was a plane coming from a specific country that was full of people being brought home to vote, and they have already said they're not voting for the ULP, but they were being brought in by the ULP.
Okay.
Yeah. Ms. King, during the election itself, you spoke quite extensively on what transpired before in terms of the preparedness of the opposition, the mobilization effort, and so forth. But let's get down now to on the day. Can you recall, or did you experience, or did you hear of any situation that you want to talk about based on some things that may have happened? I think you spoke of the police and that voter that we saw circulating online. Any other situation that transpired on the day that you may want to recall now?
Well, this one is a fantastic tale of hubris and ego and all of these things. Now, in the constituency of North Central Windward, we had two candidates. One was Chieftain Neptune and the other Ralph Everett Gonsalves. Now, Chieftain's campaign was electrifying, so much so that for the very first time in years, Ralph Gonsalves was unable to go around to other constituencies and, garner support for his colleagues. And even on the day of elections, he was caught on camera. He was being followed by a citizen, a private citizen. She followed him through his constituency as he attempted to, interact with people, to, persuade them in whatever way he thought would have persuaded them. And I just found that so comical, because here you are, sitting prime minister with how many years behind you, and on the very day of elections, you are in your constituency, begging for votes.
I saw that video.
Yes.
I saw that one.
And I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, but look at this. This is just such a sad exit. A super sad exit. You should be so comfortable that you will know that, okay, my constituency is safe. But on the very day, he's there looking for support. Now, something else that happened that I think is noteworthy, I think people went out very early to vote. And I remember one person on Facebook saying that he did not see a long line at a certain center, polling station. And I said to him, that's because they were there early in the morning. People got up because people prayed overnight. There were numerous prayer cells around this country. People fasted. And so when morning broke, people went to the polling stations. They did not delay. and they voted early. So even when you were listening to commentary, you would hear that oh, that's in the afternoon. There are only 10 people here because people went out and they voted early. And that is something that doesn't always happen, but I guess they wanted to make sure that their vote was in and it was counted. And perhaps education or little, what's the word I'm looking for here? Information given about being in the line and ensuring that you're able to get your vote in. I think that helped to get people up and going.
Adriana, that comes back to also those new faces and new styles, because you see, you study political dynamics of these situations, and you can correlate them to transformational leadership and people's participation. You understand? When you have candidates that can excite the people and transform, people talk about money, money, money. Listen, man, the emotional factor trumps is money every time. Every time. So I think that was very, very important in St. Vincent's case. And it's something that is very important necessary to remove dictatorships. You have to build an exciting campaign.
I just popped into the live to see the comments, and I'm seeing somebody who is suggesting that Friday was all over the place. And that's not true at all. Dr. Godwin Friday votes in Beckway, okay? So it's impossible for him to be all over the place. What I'm talking about.
But as an opposition, I don't see nothing wrong in it because you have to be hungry. So I'm cool if
well, there you go. And he is one who they have labeled as being lazy. So if he's all over the place, then he's definitely not lazy, right?
Exactly.
I mean, yeah. Let me ask a few, Miss King. Moving forward, because you have the what you might call the sour grapes people and the sweet grapes people. So as we move forward, as St. Vincent move forward as a country, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, let me not leave out Grenadines, so I get some flack for that. Like when you say Trinidad, you have to say Trinidad and Tobago. So, but moving forward, how do you see this whole question of unity and the people? Because at the end of the day, the elections is over. And I think that too is another mistake that our leaders make in the region. Even in Dominica's case, you hear our prime minister saying, well, I heard him in a comment just on Friday when they asked for his comment on the election. Say, well, I tell my ministers and my people, they must stay with their people. The people who vote for you, you want to always be there with them and seeing them and blah, blah, blah. Now, it's not a question of the people who vote for you. After the election, you're the government for the entire country.
Correct.
So you can't be promoting or tell your ministers that they must out there in the community and be in touch with the people who voted for you. Because you're basically saying that you're here to serve the people who voted for you and the others don't care. So we have to guard ourselves against that. So how do you see that divide closing up between those who are a little unsettled now and the NDP? Because that's going to be a challenge moving forward. And I think Zed made the point earlier. The people have to continue to stay engaged. They cannot now say, well, okay, we voted for NDP. NDP say they're going to do X, Y, and Z for us. NDP do it. 5 years down the road, they're not happy. They say, well, NDP didn't. They have to remain engaged. Where do you see?
In the interest of time, we have 10 more minutes.
Where do you see that? How do you see that unity manifesting itself?
Well, one of the things that Dr. Friday has stressed, during the campaign is that it's for all of we. There's going to be no victimization of anyone. And some people might think, well, but how could it not be, how would you not victimize people? And so there are people right now who you would see on social media explaining that, look, there's certain things that will change, but nobody, and this is what Dr. Friday stresses all the time, if you're in your job, you're qualified for your job, you're doing your job, nobody's coming for you. There isn't this this whole movement of just taking people and just shipping them out. And I think Vincentians have to have faith in that. I am one of those people who always say that the power of the people is greater than the people in power. And I push for that. I push for accountability on both sides. I am a supporter of the NDP. I do criticize them when I think they should be criticized. As what they say, I get cussed out for doing so, but that's okay. I stand on integrity and I stand on principles.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So he said this, and I think it's up to us now as Vincentians. We've come together and we've got rid of one of the strongest regimes we've ever had. So I think we'll be able to keep this new one in check. We'll definitely be able to keep this new government in check, because now that the atmosphere is so much lighter, more people are speaking out. And so because that fear is gone, a new government must stay on course. That's how I see it.
Right.
Yeah.
But having said that very quickly, though, after I'll say very quickly, we must not construe no victimization to mean that when the government goes there and the government does some thorough forensic investigation into persons that were given the responsibility to manage public funds, that certain things are found wanting not to take appropriate action. So that has to be a distinction. Because if, for example, as you said, there are shops in the airport that were supposed to pay rent and they didn't pay rent for 5 years, you can't tell me, well, if I ask the question now, why didn't you pay rent, or how that contract was given in the first place? That is victimization. That is not victimization.
It is not.
So I think that has to be clearly distinct.
Correct.
All right, Adriana, in terms of, we winding up that conversation tonight, I know there's much more that you can say, but, we have to bring it to wrap in just a bit. And please, I beseech you now on behalf of the many, many persons listening here, your brother, Mr. Kenson King, I know I tried reaching out to him. He told me he's constrained, but do what you can, please, so that we can have your brother here in terms of he sharing some thoughts with us as well. We'd appreciate that very, very much. But the simple question I want to punch at you now is, we in Dominica, the region, and the world by extension, we sort of were there with you guys in terms of that sort of celebration, that celebratory mood that you guys in. I personally, I coined it as you guys were emancipated from some
yes, that's how we see it too.
I saw figuratively you guys buried the ULP, you had it in coffins, you guys put it on little boats and drifted across. So can you just speak to that in terms of the mood now of the people as to that they being quote unquote liberated in that regard?
Lofty, you're using all the right words. Those are the words that we're using. We have been liberated. It's Freedom Day. It's Conquer Day. And everybody will tell you that the place just feels lighter. It feels so much lighter, as though something that was heavy on you and it has been lifted. The air seems fresher. Everything just seems to be renewed here in St. Vincent and Grenadines, and people are celebrating. People are still celebrating. Those horns that came out during the campaign, they are still blowing. At all hours in the night, all hours in the morning, people are still driving around and blowing their horns, because the excitement that's in Vincentians now, this whole renewed spirit, I don't know when it's going to stop, because we're already in the Christmas season. So I think we're going to go straight into Christmas with this. But definitely, Vincentians feel relieved. We feel as though we could breathe again.
True. Thank you. Guys, your wind-up comments, because we have to leave in like 5 minutes. Thank you, Ms. King.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Zed, you want to go on?
Go right ahead.
I could go ahead. Lofty, Ms. King, thanks for your contribution. And I think you made some very crucial points. I want to end up on the people's thing. you know, and especially in regards and why the people have to take responsibility for their future. You know, my country has become this kind of place where citizens have just left their future in the hands of politicians and political parties. And you know, to me, that's a disservice. It's almost like not liking yourself anymore. And we need to take stock of that, because and especially when you lay your future in the hands of political parties that are disorganized, that do not exploit opportunities, that miss opportunities of momentum of the people, and you know, in a fighting and a whole bunch of unnecessary distractions to the political process, it is even more imperative that you decide to take responsibility for your future. And I really want to call upon my people. We cannot keep laying our future exclusively in the hands of politicians, political parties, Labour Party, United Workers' Party, all of them, especially when a party repeatedly does not fails us at this political process. I am not saying elections are not stolen. I'm not saying this thing. But when you have parliamentarians who do nothing in their constituencies, absolutely nothing, absolutely not even a flower show in a constituency, absolutely nothing, there is no reason to be excited about a candidate winning an election. You understand? We've had that kind of process in opposition in Dominica for too goddamn long. And we as citizenry, we have to begin realizing that we have to take responsibility for ourselves in this time moving forward. And I hope in this cycle, we can do that as Dominicans and stop laying our responsibility exclusively at the hand of political parties and political leaders, and then blaming those political parties for our failure. We have to get involved. St. Vincent showed us the way. It can work. And it works when you do it the right way. Let us start mobilizing our citizenry for us to deal with this madness Roosevelt scary. Roosevelt scary is a national problem, not a UWP problem, not a Freedom Party problem, a national problem. And we as citizenry, we have to start taking national responsibility for the removal of Roosevelt scary from Dominica's political landscape. God bless.
Zed, well said. Thank you very, very much indeed for time spent here tonight. Alvin,
yes,
up.
well, let me just say very briefly, let me first of all thank you, Ms. King, for sharing with us this evening. I think we've learned a lot from you in terms of what you've shared. Of course, there are going to be different point of views, and I saw it on our Facebook Live, and everybody entitled to that, what makes us who we are as a people. But I will say, though, that politics is about people, family, and communities. That's what it's all about. People, family, and communities. And at the core of that is, first of all, our economy. That everybody can work, can eat, can live in their community and in their country. I mean, you just said 5 years now, you don't have pay. You can't travel, you can't move. I mean, that's a travesty in itself. You know? So
I'm just finishing the program, 5 minutes.
Ed, mute your thing, mute your mic there. And then, of course, one of the problems facing the region is youth unemployment. It is the same thing in Dominica, and it's across the board. And you showed how young people got engaged. And then we want transparent and accountable government. That's what we vote these leaders for. And I think that is part of the program. So I again want to congratulate you and the people of St. Vincent. I think you have showed that with a proper education campaign, if I may put it this way, a good empowerment strategy, as well as an engagement strategy can bring results. So I would hope that our folks in Dominica are paying heed, are reflecting on those things, and when the appropriate time comes, we'll apply some of the strategies that the people of St. Vincent applied to say, you know what, Mr. Skerritt, you've been there for 25 years. You've done what you've done for the people of Dominica. Thank you for what you've done. But now is the time for us to turn the page and have a new set of persons in the reign of government to take this country forward. So again, thank you. And to all our folks who are still online with us, thank you for staying with us and for your comments. We appreciate that immensely.
All right, Alvin, thank you very, very much for your closing and final comments. Miss King, you are the queen, as it were, of the hour or hour and a half you spent here with us tonight. Just give us some of your parting words, knowing that you will be back sometime in the future.
Well, I did not realize that much time has gone. It has been such a pleasure.
Yes.
So I'll definitely be back to have this conversation with you at another time. I want to say to the people of Dominica, if we in St. Vincent and Grenadines could get together and vote out the ULP, nothing is impossible. But you have to come together. You have to decide that you're doing it for nationhood and not just for your party. You have to want to elevate your country and not just individuals. And you have to now think of ways that you could get this done. I think this program tonight shared quite a few. And so it's about getting them in gear at this point. And to those in St. Vincent and Grenadines who are listening, who are on the live, together we won and together we go forward. Thank you.
Yellow is the code.
Yellow is the code. By the way, St. Lucia's elections is tomorrow, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
So hopefully yellow is the code.
Yeah.
All right, folks, that is it for us tonight. This one from Steffer Production entitled Big Up to the Struggling People. We're going to take a line or two from this song and then bring it to a wrap tonight. Let me just take it from the very, very top.
They go the real hard work that big picture. Look on the poor and show disrespect. Them say you're lazy, that's why you're so low. But them never walking on the shoes where you go. You're right, living on it before the sun. Sweat on your brows and it days. Don't stand the feels while I so stay real. But your heart strong like I am the steel.
Yes, we salute all of you guys out there, the struggling people, yes, of this region. Though we had some technical issues tonight, but we managed to make it. Thank you very much to all of you guys who tuned in tonight. Those of you from St. Vincent and the Grenadines who tuned in tonight, thank you for your eyes and ears. And yes, our regular folks, our regular Civic Vibes, that is family, good evening to you. See you guys next week, same time, same place. Thank you to Miss King, Adriana King, tonight for sharing some time with us. Giving us her perspective on the just concluded elections in her country, where we saw this landslide victory to the NDP after 25 years in the political wilderness. Any lessons for us in Dominica? Let's continue that conversation and more next week if the good Lord above is willing. Folks, bye-bye. Thank you. We at Civic Vibes, we love you.